July 2012, Helsinki. The atmosphere in Nokia's headquarters resembled a funeral that had dragged on too long. On the stock monitors, numbers burned red, recording a historic anti-record. A single share of the company was worth €1.33. Think about this figure. Just recently, this corporation formed 4% of Finland's entire gross domestic product. It paid more taxes than any other entity in the country. Every second phone on planet Earth bore the Nokia logo. And then, in a matter of years, capitalization collapsed by a catastrophic 98%. Analysts from Wall Street and the City of London were no longer arguing if Nokia would go bankrupt. They were placing bets on exactly when it would happen. The obituaries were written. All that remained was to fill in the date. But Nokia refused to die. Instead of clinging to the wreckage of past greatness, the leadership did what seemed like madness. They sold the soul of the company, phone production, to their main partner, Microsoft, bought a Franco-American telecommunications giant, and retreated into the shadows for a whole decade. Fast forward. October 2025, Washington. The GTC conference. Jensen Huang, the man in the leather jacket who runs the world's most valuable company, Nvidia, takes the stage. He announces an investment of $1 billion. The object of investment? Nokia. The CEO of the Finnish company, commenting on this event, said a phrase that changed the perception of the future. This partnership will put an artificial intelligence data center in every person's pocket. This is not a story about phones. This is a story about the grandest corporate reincarnation in the history of technology. This is the tale of how Nokia went from inevitable bankruptcy to the status of architect of the artificial intelligence of the future. To understand why Nokia survived, one must look at its DNA. And it was never purely technological. It all began back in 1865, when Fredrik Idestam, an engineer with a vision, built a paper mill in southern Finland. At that time, Finland was part of the Russian Empire, and the demand for paper was growing at a frantic pace. 6 years later, Idestam and his friend Leo Mechelin founded the company Nokia AB. The name came from the Nokian-Virta River, on the banks of which their second factory stood. Over the next century, the company did everything except electronics. They merged with Finnish Rubber Works, a manufacturer of galoshes and tires, and Finnish Cable Works, a manufacturer of telegraph cables. This conglomerate, which officially became Nokia Corporation in 1967, was a typical industrial monster. They produced toilet paper, car tires, respirators, and even hunting rifles. Entry into the world of telecommunications happened almost by accident. In 1979, Nokia created a joint venture called Mobira. Back then, mobile communication resembled science fiction for the chosen few. Their first product, the Mobira Senator, released in 1982, weighed nearly 10 kilograms. It wasn't a phone you carried with you, it was a phone your car drove around. It cost as much as a decent car and was intended for top executives and oil tycoons. But even then, the board of directors looked at electronics as a side experiment. The money came from cables and rubber. The situation changed only in 1992, when Jorma Ollila took the CEO's chair. Ollila was an atypical CEO. He was 41 years old, and he ran the mobile division, which most shareholders dreamed of selling off as a loss-making asset. But Ollila saw what others missed: digitalization. He realized the world was on the verge of a connectivity revolution. His strategy was radical and brutal. Ollila decided to sell everything that didn't relate to telecom. Paper mills, tire production, cable factories, everything that had fed the company for over a century went under the hammer. Nokia bet everything on zero, on mobile phones. It worked. In 1994, Nokia listed on the New York Stock Exchange. What happened next, economists call the Finnish miracle. In 6 years, the company transformed the economy of an entire nation. By 2000, Nokia accounted for 70% of the Helsinki Stock Exchange's capitalization. It was during this period that a legend was born, the Nokia 3310. This phone became a cultural phenomenon. It sold 126 million units. It introduced humanity to the game Snake. It became a symbol of indestructibility. Memes about the 3310 surviving a nuclear explosion or breaking asphalt upon impact still circulate on the internet. By 2007, Nokia controlled almost 40% of the global phone market. That was more than the combined share of its three closest competitors. They were kings of the hill, and it seemed no one could dethrone them. But in California, one man in a black turtleneck had a different opinion. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs took the stage at the Moscone Center and showed the world the iPhone. "We call it iPhone," he said, and the world changed forever. Nokia's reaction to this event is a textbook example of corporate blindness. Just days after the Apple presentation, Nokia's analytical department prepared a detailed report. 9 top managers concluded the iPhone is a serious threat, and the multi-touch interface is the future industry standard. But upper management waved the report away. Nokia engineers took the iPhone apart down to the screw and found a pile of reasons for criticism. The production cost was too high. The phone failed the standard drop test, a test for falling from a height of 1.5 meters, and, most importantly, it had no physical keyboard. In the eyes of Nokia directors, the iPhone was a niche toy, fragile, expensive, and devoid of features serious people were used to, like MMS or video calls. At first, the market seemed to confirm the Finns were right. By the end of 2007, Nokia held 50% of the smartphone market, while Apple barely scraped together 3%. 2008 was a record year for Nokia. They sold 468 million devices. But the tectonic plates had already shifted. That same year, HTC, together with Google, released the first Android phone. Suddenly, Nokia found itself in a situation where it was playing not just against Apple, but against an army of manufacturers united by a new operating system from Google. The empire's answer arrived in 2009. It was the Nokia N97 model. On paper, it looked like a techno-geek's dream. A 5-megapixel camera, a slide-out QWERTY keyboard, GPS, huge memory capacity. Nokia marketers proudly christened it the iPhone killer. But euphoria quickly turned to user rage. The N97 turned out to be a disaster. The touchscreen was resistive, responding to pressure, not touch, and worked terribly. The Symbian operating system, which was perfect for button phones, couldn't cope with a touch interface. It froze, lagged, and crashed. The OV Store app marketplace had a pitiful 1,000 programs at launch, while the App Store already offered 50 times more. The reputational blow was devastating. Anssi Vanjoki, Nokia's executive vice president, later publicly admitted, the N97 was a tremendous disappointment in terms of the quality of experience for the consumers. This was the beginning of the end. In September 2010, the board of directors hired Stephen Elop, a former Microsoft executive. He became the first foreigner at the helm of Finnish pride. His mission was to save the sinking ship. After spending 5 months in the CEO's office, Elop wrote a letter that would go down in business history as the burning platform memo. He used the metaphor of an oil worker waking up on a burning oil rig in the middle of the sea. He has a choice: stay on the platform and burn alive, or jump into the freezing water to have a slim chance of survival. Nokia is standing on a burning platform, Elop stated. The fire was the outdated Symbian system. The water was the transition to a new ecosystem. Elop rejected the idea of switching to Android. He believed that there, Nokia would become just one of many manufacturers feeding Google. Instead, he bet on Windows Phone from Microsoft, hoping to create a third global ecosystem. The problem was not the strategy, but the communication. The memorandum, intended for internal use, was leaked to the press. The effect was instant and destructive. Effectively, the company's CEO announced to the whole world that Nokia's current products on Symbian were junk with no future. Smartphone sales collapsed by a third in a single quarter. No one wanted to buy a phone that the manufacturer itself called dead. The first fruits of the collaboration with Microsoft, the Lumia 800 and 710, appeared at the end of 2011. The design was excellent, but the ecosystem was empty. Developers had already chosen iOS and Android. In 2 years, Nokia sold 36 million Lumia smartphones. For comparison, Apple sold 150 million iPhones in 2013 alone. When Elop arrived in 2010, Nokia's share of the smartphone market was 33%. When he left office in 2014, it had fallen to less than 3%. By July 2012, shares had fallen to a historic low. But behind the scenes, a different game was being played. Risto Siilasmaa, who took over the board of directors during the hardest times, understood. The phones could no longer be saved. The numbers were relentless. Operating losses reached 2.3 billion euros. Siilasmaa later compared his actions to repairing a plane mid-air. We disconnected the engines, removed the wings, and reassembled the fuselage while the passengers were still on board. In January 2013, Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft, called with an offer to buy Nokia's mobile business. At first, the Finns resisted. It was a matter of national honor. But logic overcame emotion. In September 2013, the deal was announced. Microsoft would buy the Devices and Services division for $7.2 billion. In reality, this wasn't a sale. It was a genius escape. Nokia got rid of the asset that was dragging it to the bottom, received a pile of cash, and kept for itself what most people didn't even suspect existed: the network infrastructure. Even before the deal with Microsoft was finalized, Nokia bought out Siemens' share in their joint venture, Nokia Siemens Networks. This was a strategic 180-degree turn. Stop making toys for people and start building the foundation on which those toys work. The irony of fate revealed itself 2 years later. Microsoft wrote off $7.6 billion in losses from the Nokia acquisition and laid off nearly 8,000 employees. Effectively, Microsoft paid $7 billion for air. Nokia, on the other hand, exited the game with money, patents, and a new vector of development. It was, perhaps, the best exit in the history of the corporate world.
In May 2014, Rajeev Suri walked into the office of the CEO of Nokia. His appointment was a signal to the market. The time for experiments with outsiders from Silicon Valley was over.
Suri was not an alien from Microsoft like Stephen Elop. He was a veteran, one of us, a man who knew the smell of heated servers and the hum of base stations. It was he who pulled the network division, Nokia Siemens Networks, out of a deep crisis, turning it into a profitable machine. Now he was tasked with doing the same for the entire company, but the stakes were incomparably higher. After the sale of the mobile business, Nokia had billions of dollars in cash in its accounts. To the average investor, this looked like a victory. But to a strategist, it was a trap. In the world of telecommunications, size is critical. At that time, the market was divided among three predators: Sweden's Ericsson, China's Huawei, and Finland's Nokia. And Nokia was the smallest of this trio. Huawei played unfairly but effectively. Having the bottomless pockets of the Chinese government behind them, they offered operators a full package, from antennas on roofs to routers in the network core, at prices that killed competition. Ericsson had scale and history. Nokia had only mobile communication. If an operator wanted to build a network turnkey, they went to Huawei. Nokia risked turning into a niche player that would eventually just be swallowed up. Suri understood. To survive, one must become a giant. He needed something to fill the gaps in Nokia's portfolio: fixed connectivity, optical networks, IP routing. In April 2015, Nokia made a move that took the breath away from the financial directors of its competitors. The company announced its intention to acquire Alcatel-Lucent, a Franco-American conglomerate, for a staggering 15.6 billion euros. This wasn't just a purchase. It was a takeover of a company that, by many parameters, was more complex than Nokia itself. Why Alcatel-Lucent? Aside from the obvious expansion of market share, there was a hidden diamond in this deal, the value of which was impossible to measure in money alone. That diamond was called Bell Labs. To the world of science, Bell Labs is what the Vatican is to Catholics. It is the sacred ground of innovation. Founded in 1925, this laboratory became the birthplace of modern civilization. It was within the walls of Bell Labs that the transistor was invented, the brick from which all modern electronics are built. The laser was born there. Solar panels were created there. The Unix operating system and the C programming language, upon which the entire Internet still rests, were developed there. Bell Labs researchers have received 9 Nobel Prizes in physics and chemistry. By buying Alcatel-Lucent, Nokia wasn't just buying factories and contracts. It was buying brains. It was buying a patent portfolio numbering over 29,000 active patents. This meant that anyone building a 5G network, and later 6G, would inevitably use technologies that now belonged to the Finns. Integration was painful. Merging Finnish corporate culture, direct, modest, with French bureaucracy and American ambition resembled an attempt to mix water with oil. Thousands of jobs had to be cut, duplicate directions closed, and the French government, which feared losing a national treasure, had to be calmed. The process took 19 months. But the result justified the means. By 2017, Nokia became the only company in the West that could offer an end-to-end solution. They could lay an optical cable across the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, place a router in a Google data center, and install a 5G tower in the center of London. Nokia was no longer a phone manufacturer. It had become the architect of the planet's global nervous system. And, as it turned out, it was the ownership of Bell Labs that gave them the key to doors that hadn't even been drawn on the blueprints yet. Doors to the world of artificial intelligence.
By 2017, the value of the new Nokia had risen 20 times compared to the low of 2012. And in 2018, Bell Labs engineers introduced the Reef Shark chipset, which tripled the bandwidth of 5G networks and significantly reduced power consumption. And then big politics came into play. In May 2019, the Trump administration placed Huawei on the blacklist. The biggest player in the market, who had won for years due to low prices, thanks to Chinese government subsidies, was suddenly thrown out of the game in the US and many European countries. Britain ordered operators to completely cut Huawei equipment from their networks by 2027. For Nokia, this was supposed to be a windfall. And at first, it was. They signed contracts with British Telecom, AT&T, T-Mobile. By October 2020, Nokia had 100 commercial contracts for 5G. Suri called Nokia the Western alternative to Huawei. But the euphoria was premature. The tech world is cruel. Over the next 5 years, Nokia took several painful blows to the gut. The American giant Verizon severed cooperation, giving a $6.6 billion contract to Samsung. Then AT&T left, choosing Ericsson for a $14 billion contract. By the beginning of 2025, the situation looked grim again. The operating profit of the mobile networks division fell by 89%. Investors began whispering about decline again. Nokia found itself in the trap of commoditization, the transformation of their high-tech equipment into a common raw commodity where only price matters. They needed a new breakthrough, and it came from where they least expected. Let's transport ourselves to October 28, 2025, Washington, D.C. The GTC conference, hosted by Nvidia, has long ceased to be just a presentation of new video cards for gamers. Now it is Woodstock for the world of artificial intelligence. Thousands of developers, investors, and politicians await the speech of one man, Jensen Huang. Huang took the stage not to show off another chip. He came to announce a paradigm shift. His message was alarming for American lawmakers. We lost 5G. And it was true. America did not have its own manufacturer of 5G equipment. The entire US infrastructure was built on equipment from Ericsson, Nokia, or Samsung. But Huang was looking further. He spoke about a problem that not even the most powerful supercomputer in the cloud could solve. This problem is the speed of light. The world of the future that Nvidia is building is a world of autonomous machines. Robotaxis, drone couriers, robotic surgeons, smart factories where manipulators move at speeds inaccessible to the human eye. For these systems, signal latency is a matter of life and death. If a child runs out in front of a driverless car, the car cannot send video to a data center 500 kilometers away, wait for the artificial intelligence to process it, and receive a command to brake. This takes 50 to 100 milliseconds. In that time, the car will travel several meters. The decision must be made instantly, in 1 to 5 milliseconds. This means that artificial intelligence cannot live only in the cloud. It must come down to Earth. It must live on the edge of the network, edge, right on the cellular tower to which the car is connected. Nvidia had the brains for this. Its graphics processing units, GPUs, and Grace Hopper accelerators. But Nvidia didn't have the body, the towers, antennas, and radio equipment. They needed a partner. And here the choice narrowed down to one candidate. Why Nokia? Why not Ericsson? It was a matter of architecture. In recent years, Ericsson had built its systems based on specialized chips, ASICs, from Intel. This is a reliable, proven solution, but it is rigid. To integrate Nvidia chips there, one would have to build crutches, additional servers next to the tower, the so-called look-aside architecture. This is expensive, energy-intensive, and complex. Nokia took a different path. Their architecture was more open and modular. Nokia engineers developed the concept of inline acceleration. This meant that Nvidia chips could be inserted directly into the data processing stream, like a heart in the circulatory system, rather than as an external pump. This allowed AI algorithms to be processed exactly at the moment the radio signal was received. Jensen Huang, a man who sees the future better than others, realized Nokia is the only Western vendor whose technological base is ready for AI RAN, radio access network with artificial intelligence, without the need to tear everything down and build anew. The announcement of the $1 billion investment came as a shock. Nvidia wasn't just buying shares. It was buying access to millions of base stations around the world. Huang and Pekka Lundmark, CEO of Nokia, called this partnership the AI RAN Alliance. The essence of this revolution is simple yet grand. The cellular tower ceases to be just a relay. It becomes a computer. Imagine a tower that understands what is happening in its coverage area. It doesn't just transmit bits. It can optimize the signal for each individual user, using neural networks to predict interference. It can turn off unnecessary transmitters in milliseconds, saving up to 40% of electricity, a huge problem for telecom. But most importantly, it becomes a host for the applications of the future. When you put on augmented reality glasses, the graphics for them won't be drawn by a weak chip in the temple of the glasses, but by a powerful Nvidia server on the Nokia tower around the corner. Your phone will become just a screen, and all the intelligence will move to the network. The market instantly understood the scale of the game. Nokia shares soared by 22% in one day. Analysts at Morgan Stanley called this the second birth of the Finnish company. If in the 4G era Nokia was just a pipe for data transmission, then in the AI RAN era, it becomes the foundation for physical artificial intelligence. The deal with Nvidia showed, whoever controls the infrastructure controls the future of AI. And the company that everyone had written off after the death of button phones suddenly found itself at the center of the hottest technological revolution of the 21st century. It wasn't catching up to the train. It was building the rails on which this train was to travel.
What is AI RAN, and why does it change everything? First, it makes networks smart today. Embedded AI optimizes the signal in real time, reducing tower energy consumption by 30%. In a world where energy prices are rising and operators fight for every penny of margin, this is a colossal advantage. Second, it is the foundation for the future. It turns every base station into a mini data center. The CEO of Nokia wasn't joking about a data center in your pocket. Your phone no longer needs a super powerful processor that burns through the battery in 2 hours. Heavy AI calculations will happen on the tower 500 meters away from you, and you will get the result instantly. The market reacted instantly. Nokia shares jumped 22%, the largest daily growth since 2013. T-Mobile signed a contract for a pilot launch in 2026. Analysts predict the AI RAN market will exceed $200 billion by 2030. If this plan works, Nokia will cease to be just a telecom company. It will become the backbone of the physical world of AI. It will become the nervous system connecting the digital brain to physical reality. The story of Nokia is not just a chronicle of rises and falls. It is a textbook on strategic management, written in sweat and blood. Looking back, one can highlight 3 fundamental decisions that saved the company. Lesson 1. Know how to kill your darling. In 2013, the sale of the mobile business seemed like a capitulation. Critics screamed about betrayal. Conspiracy theorists accused Elop of sabotage in favor of Microsoft. But time showed that this was an act of genius foresight. Most companies hold on to their core product until the last breath, until it depreciates to zero. Remember Kodak or Blockbuster. Nokia had the courage to sell the asset while it was still worth billions and shift the risks to someone else. Lesson 2. Invest crisis money in transformation, not stabilization. Having received money from Microsoft, Nokia could have simply distributed dividends, cut costs, and tried to quietly survive the storm. Instead, they spent twice as much as they received to purchase Alcatel-Lucent. They didn't try to preserve the status quo. They bought themselves a new identity. They understood to survive, you have to become someone else, someone bigger. Lesson 3. Bet on what you already have, but what no one notices. Everyone was looking at phones. No one paid attention to network equipment. It was a boring B2B business. But it was this boring asset, which Nokia had been developing for decades in the shadow of flashy smartphones, that became the lifeline. Often, a company's salvation lies not in finding some magical new idea, but in reevaluating the resources already at your disposal. Nokia lost the smartphone war. This fact cannot be changed. But losing a battle does not mean losing the war. Once their slogan was connecting people. Ironically, they continue to do just that. Only now, not through devices in your hands, but through invisible networks that permeate the air around us. The Nokia 3310 went down in history as an indestructible phone. As it turned out, the company that created it is made of the same material.